Okay, so hello and welcome back to another Unity tutorial. In this video we're going to be starting off our next mini-series now that we finished the solid one. In this series we're going to be making a multiplayer game. We're going to keep it simple, just, you open the game, put in a nickname, you join a room with someone else if they're online with their nickname, and then maybe you have a little shootout and you get points or so on. Something simple just to understand the basics. Now, if you've been watching my streams, you'll see that I've been making a kind of Hearthstone card game clone using Photon, which is the software we're going to be using to make the multiplayer game. And I've been having a lot of fun with that and learning a lot, and now I've got to the point where I'm confident enough to start teaching you guys the basics to create your own multiplayer games. Because I know it's one thing a lot of people want to do, but are either scared away of because it's very difficult. And I'll admit, it's more difficult than doing single player games, obviously, but it's not too difficult to actually just get started with. If you've just started using Unity, don't jump straight into multiplayer. Learn the basics of Unity first, then go on to multiplayer. But if you guys have familiarity with Unity and how it works, and you've made like a single player game or something before, like something simple at least, then you can go on and make a simple multiplayer game. It's not that hard to wrap your head around, really. So yeah, we're going to be getting to that. I'll explain more about it in the video, but let's first of all thank my patrons, with special thanks to Flow State Games, Average Morning, Art Farrell, Buderay, Remy Baldwin, and Phil Baum. If anyone else is able to help support the channel monetarily, the link is down below. If not, there are links down below to my social media, Twitch, Twitter, Discord, and so on. So if you could help support me on any of those, that would be great. Now let's get into the video. Okay, so before we do any coding, you guys obviously need to get Photon and sign in. It's not the hardest thing in the world if you've ever created an account for anything in the past. I'll give you a quick rundown of Photon and how it works on multiplayer, like super basics, right? I'm missing out a lot of stuff here. But essentially, you have a server. So if you're playing a game like League of Legends, Counter-Strike, Hearthstone, whatever, right? An online game with a lobby, or well, not even a lobby, like any multiplayer game will have a server. But the point is, those games, for example, let's use Hearthstone, because that's what I'm doing on stream right now. When you make a game, that game will be hosted on the Blizzard servers. The Blizzard's company that made Hearthstone, in case you guys don't know. And you will join with the other person that you're playing against, and you'll get told what cards you have, and the enemy will get told what cards they have, and then obviously it'll take turns in who's drawing cards and playing cards and so on. All this stuff happens. But you as a client aren't actually running the game on your computer as such. You're just running a visual representation of it, and you're being told the stuff you need to know. So for example, when you play a card, what actually happens is it tells the server that you wish to play that card. Then the server would check, can you play that card, what's going to happen when you play that card, and it'll run all the logic. And then while doing that, say for example your card is deal damage, when it registers that it's dealt damage to the enemy or anything, then the enemy will be told through packets sent from the server to them that, you've taken damage. So then the other player will, react accordingly by changing the UI on the health on the UI, and all that lot. That's a very simple, explanation of it. Now, Photon is probably the most popular multiplayer package for Unity. So this does the whole lobby and room-based system for you. So it's got loads of useful functions and built-in logic to help you just quickly get players into a lobby and then send them off to a match, and then they play a match and you go back to the lobby or whatever. That whole system's already made for you. All you really have to focus on is basically writing your game logic and then doing a bit of networking code to send events and stuff, but it's actually not that difficult, to be honest. There's different packages that change kind of the way you have to build your game. Like normally you'd write code on a server, but in the free version, and I think even the plus version, you still have to write code on a client. So you treat one of your clients in a game, clients just being a person in the game, a player in the game, you treat one of those as the master client. They handle all the stuff that has to happen once, and then when that stuff happens, it tells everyone it's happened. And then also if someone leaves and they are the master client will get passed on to someone else. So you got to be careful when you're thinking about that. And also, you have to think about what do you do if you're playing a Hearthstone game and someone leaves and then they miss what happened in the next turn, then they join back, how are they going to know what happened, and so on. And that's all complex stuff to think about. We just want to get a simple game working where we assume people don't just disconnect and then reconnect. But even then, we'll still take that into consideration. We just want to basically create a lobby, get some players in there, and let them shoot each other and see it all happening on the different ends, right? So let's start by signing in now. So you want to go to sign in, and you want to create an account. Now I'm already signed in actually, so that just popped in instantly because I already had an account. So you guys, make an account, and then here you can see the two games that the two projects that I've already used Photon for. So that's my own testing project that I've done in my own time, and then this is the one I've been using for card game streaming, the stream I'm doing on Twitch over this month and the next month. And basically you create a project and you see a 20 CCU. So CCU means concurrent users, or how many users at once. So for the free version of Photon, you can have 20 players at once on your game, which obviously isn't a whole lot, but it's for free and you can use it as much as you want, right? There's no limits. Well, the limit is the 20 users thing, right? So unless your game's going to be like really big or you want to actually publish it, you know, you don't need to pay anything. You can build your entire game for free, and then when you realize, I actually want to, you know, make this public, then you can essentially pay to increase your user limit. And to be honest, it's not actually that expensive. And no, I'm not sponsored by them, but regardless, you want to create a new app and you want to name it something. You want to choose Photon Pun, which is Photon Unity Networking. So that's what we're going to be using. There are others and stuff like that, but I don't actually know much about the others. We're going to be using Pun. Then you can name it. So I'm going to call it like Photon Tutorial. And then description's up to you. URL's up to you. And then you press create, okay? And when you press create, it'll take you back here. Now you'll notice, here it is, Photon Tutorial, you have an app ID. So keep this page open for later, or copy and paste this app ID. Now if you click on it, it reveals it, right? So I don't want to show you my entire ID, because then you'll use mine, and then like you'll basically use up the user's limit, right? You don't want other people using your code, because then they can essentially leech off your limit. So you actually want to create your own one yourself. There's more benefit to that because then you get your own 20 users. If you took someone else's, then you'd be essentially splitting it between you, which isn't good. And this is free anyway, so why wouldn't you just make your own? So make your own, get your app ID, and just copy it or leave it there open for now on a tab. And then let's go over to Unity. So the next thing to do is to go to your window and asset store and download Photon. Now, there's different Photon packages as you saw on the website, but the one we're using, which is the recommended one, and as far as I'm aware, the most updated and so on and so forth, is Photon Pun. So if you search Photon Pun, it might come up with the Pun Plus, Pun Plus 2. Just click on one of these. I know they're expensive, but that's because that includes the increased user limit. You want the free version, I assume. So if you scroll down, you'll see Photon Pun 2 for free. And then you can import that. And when you import it, there's bits you might want to install. So you can get this entire thing if you wanted to, but there's bits we don't need. For example, the demos I'm not going to include. So if I just uncheck the demos and then Photon Libs, intro, I don't know what every little bit here does, but I know we want it all pretty much apart from demos. Even if we technically don't use every little bit of it, it's fine. Just get rid of all the demo ones. That's all of them anyway. Okay. So I've just unchecked all the demo folders and I'm importing, and I'll be back with you in a second. Okay, cool. So once it's done, you'll actually get this little pop-up window saying Pun Setup, App ID, or Email. Now, I've never actually done it with my email before, but I just recommend doing it with the App ID. So if you go back to your browser and you have that App ID, which is here, just copy it. You have to left-click on it to reveal it all, then copy it and paste it into the Unity pop-up window that you saw, that one. So I'm going to do it off screen, or I'll just actually pause the video and do it so that you guys obviously don't see my code, but you know, simply just copy paste it and press setup. Okay, so when you're done, you'll have a Photon server settings scriptable object. If you click on it, you'll see some things here. In settings is where your app ID thing will be if you want to change it, or you typed it wrong or something. I mean, if you typed it wrong, I assume it won't let you log into this part anyway, but regardless, you see you got you'll have it on errors only for pun logging, so change it to full so we get to see all the logging in the console when we're debugging and stuff. So we just know exactly what's going on rather than only the errors. And then there's nothing else you really need to change on there, so just leave that. Go off there. And now we need to actually start coding for the main menu. We need to be able to let the player input their name and save it on the Photon network. And then we'll also want to log them in and have them queue into a match with someone else. That is the goal for this video, and that's what we're going to get done. So go to your scripts folder. Obviously, I've got some folders here. Prefabs, I've just dragged some stuff in from the UI. Text Mesh Pro is just for that. Photon's Photon. So the only other one that I've got here is scripts. So we go to scripts and create a new C# script. We're going to want to make a main menu script. And we're going to want to make a name input script. So I'll put it as the player name input. Okay. So I'm going to put those into a folder in a namespace, just neaten it up a bit, and then I'll meet you inside Visual Studio Code. Or Visual Studio, actually. Okay, so here I am inside Visual Studio. I've got the two scripts. I've put them inside a menus folder inside scripts and then added them to the namespace. I put Photon Tutorial.menus. And for the player name input, all we need two fields, one for the button and one for the, input field. So we're going to need to have a serialized field, private, TMP. If you're using the Text Mesh Pro version, then do this. If you're using the normal one, I think it's just input field and it's inside the UnityEngine.ui namespace. But anyway, I'm using the TMP input fields. Name input field. Okay, And then I'm also using the button class from the Unity UI, which is the continue button. Okay, so we want to import these. So we got using TM Pro and using Unity Engine.ui. Okay, these are the two fields we need to set in the inspector. And then after that, we're going to need a thing for the player prefs. So this is optional, but ideally, if you had a nickname on the game and you close the game and reopen it, you want your nickname to be the same. Now, obviously, yeah, you're allowed to change it, but you want it to load up the same. So if I name myself Dapperdino and then I come onto the game the next day, I don't want to have to type out Dapperdino every single time. I would rather have it just automatically remember Dapperdino as my name. So we're just going to save it to player prefs because it's not sensitive data. It's going to be visible to everyone anyway on the game. So we're going to write a private const string, and this is going to be the key for the player pref. So we're going to call it player prefs name key, and we'll just call it player name. So now when we request our name from the player prefs, we just pass in that key, and it's a constant, so we can't, if we misspell it, then it's fine because it's all just part of this one variable, so we can change it there. Then on start, what do we want? Well, we want to set up the input field. All right. Now, if you want a shortcut here, if you click on the red squiggle and press control dot enter, so control period enter, then it actually just makes you a new function with the correct parameters and return type. So that's pretty handy. And then here I want to make that an expression thing just to use up less space. Then inside here, what do we want to do when we start? Well, we want to say if there's no player prefs dot and then has key player prefs name key return. So what we're saying is if the player prefs does not have the key player prefs name key, then return. So basically, if it's the first time you've opened the game and you've never set your name in the player prefs, then just return. We don't want to do anything else because it clearly means you haven't got the name, right? Otherwise, we're going to go and grab their name. So we're going to store it as a string. So string default name is equal to player prefs dot get string, and then pass in the key again. So we're using the key here to check if it exists and using the key here to grab the actual value of the string. And then we're going to set the default text for the input field. So name input field dot text is equal to default name. And then we'll write another function for setting the player name. So set player name takes in the default name in this case that we've just stored there. Set player name doesn't exist, so we'll do control dot enter. Private void set player name string. We'll just return this to name though. Okay, so set player name, and we want to say the continue button dot interactable. Play dot interactable is equal to not string dot is null or empty name. So what we're doing here is basically when we have set the name, we want to set the buttons. Okay, basically when you haven't put anything in the input field, the button is disabled. As soon as something is there, some name, then the button is enabled. So you can only press the button if you've got at least one character in your name. Now you might want to have more requirements. Maybe you want the character's name to be like between a min and a max character count, and so on and so forth. But for this, I'm just basically saying as long as they put something in there, we'll accept it as a name. Okay, so we set the button based on that, and then we want to say public void save player name. Okay, and when we save the name, this is when we press continue. We'll say let's go grab the player name, which is the input field dot text, because that's the current text of the input field, and then we'll say photon network. So you have to do photon network, and then you can do you can import the photon namespace dot nickname, so set the nickname equal to the player name. So now on the photon network, this client, the client's name is player name, whatever you inputted. And then we also want to save it to player prefs so that we can then do the load up next time. So player prefs dot set string. We need the key, which is the player prefs name key, and then the player name, which is the player name. Okay, save, done, boom. That is this script done. So now if we remove system, because we don't need that, we can close the name input and we can go back and let it compile. And now what we need to do is we need to go to the UI main menu. We'll go into the prefab, go down to the input field for the player name. We'll actually go up to the panel for it and put the name input script we need reference to the continue button, which is there, button continue, and reference to the input field player name, there we go. And then on the input field, whenever the value changes on the input field, so whenever we type a character, we want to tell the panel, which has the script on, to not save player name. Where is the... I don't think I made it public. So if we go back to the name input, the set player name should be public. The auto generate made it private because it thought, well, it doesn't need to be public, but obviously we know we want it to be public. So now, if we try again and go to the player name input, we can do set player name. There you go. So whenever we type a character, it will get changed on there. And if we go back and press play now, theoretically it should work. So let's see. So the continue button is disabled, and it doesn't load up anything because we also need a event system. So if we go right click new UI event system and go drag that in up here with the main menu, now we can actually interact with the menu. So if I click and I enter a name, Dapper, whoops, the continue button isn't active, and that is because if I go to name input, button continue, I've clearly coded something wrong. So where we go here, we set it to be interactable to not is null or empty. Name comes from here. Well, actually, do I not call set player name every time I change on the input field? Oh, apparently I don't. Okay, I swear I just set that like a second ago. Let's say revert all. Is it fixed now? Yeah, it is. Okay. Apparently the prefab and the instance of it hadn't like been connected. There you go. So now if I type in a name, it's the continue button's now active. But if I remove my name, it's not active. So you have to enter a name. Okay. Simples. Now we need to go and actually make the networking code, which is relatively simple, and that's the last thing we're going to do this video. Let's get to it. Okay, in the main menu script, we want to add some fields. So the first thing we want to add is a serialized field, private game object, which is reference to the find opponent panel. Okay, and we want one also referenced to the waiting status panel. Okay, and we also want one reference to the text mesh pro UGUI. So if you're using the inbuilt Unity text, which I don't recommend, you could just write text there like that. But I'm using the text mesh pro version to get the waiting status text. Okay, and that's all we need externally. Then internally, we want to store a boolean for whether we are currently connecting. Okay, not null. False, not that. Okay, whether we are currently connecting, which obviously by default we're not connecting, but when we are, we want to set that to true. And then we also want to store some constants. So private const string game version. So this is something you'll notice in Photon. So it needs to be a string, so I'll put 0.1 like that. Essentially, the game version is what's checked by default when you try and connect to a Photon match. So if you are on version 0.1, your build of the game, and someone else is on 0.2, you won't get matched together because clearly there's some big game-breaking changes. So whenever you make changes to your game, and this is when don't worry about when you're testing your game. You don't need to keep changing the version. When you publish your game externally, like to the public, if you do that, then make sure this version is different or increased like every time you release a new version, so that it makes sure that the people playing against each other, if they're on different versions, they can't match against each other, right? They need to all be on the same version to play. So that's just, I'll leave it at 0.1. I'm probably never going to change that for the sake of the tutorials, but it's something to keep in mind if you're releasing your game. And then we also want an int for the max players per room, so the game knows when to start, right? If you need 10 players, then it'll start when you got 10, or if you need 2, it'll start when you need 2. So I'm going to go with 2. So that we can, I just want to do 2 for this kind of game, right? It's up to you. I'm going to go with max players per room equals 2, right? And then on awake, we want to set something in the Photon network. I'll write it, then I'll explain what it means. So we go to Photon network and do the import, and then the automatically sync scene equals true. So normally in Unity, you'll call scene manager.change scene, and it'll load the next scene. But the thing is, on Photon, you're on networking, multiplayer, whatever, you're on different computers. So just because you called load on one computer doesn't mean it'll load everyone. If you set this setting, what it means is when you load scene on someone in a room, it'll load it on everyone in a room, right? So if you're in a lobby waiting to start a game, and then you say, all right, go to the scene, all the players in that lobby will go to the scene. So that's just something to sync the scene between the players. Then we want to make a function for finding opponent. So public void find opponent. Okay, so when you start finding opponent, you're connecting now, essentially. So is true. Then we're going to set the find opponent panel to false, and the waiting status panel to true, because now you're waiting in queue. And we'll set the waiting status text equal to searching. Okay, and then it's going to say, well, if photon network, if I can type, if photon network dot is connected. So if you're connected, then photon network dot join random room. Okay. So a room is essentially rooms and lobbies are different in this. Lobby would be like waiting and room would be the actual game. So this will join a game if you can, essentially. Now, just because you're joining a game doesn't mean it doesn't necessarily mean joining a started game. It could be joining a game where people are waiting to join a game. I'll explain that in a minute. Okay, guys, that sounded a bit confusing, but regardless, if the photon network isn't connected, then we want to say photon network dot game version is equal to game version. Photon network dot connect using settings. Okay, so that means it will use the Photon server settings that that scriptable object we set up earlier with the app ID and stuff. That's what it will connect using. And essentially we're saying if we're already on the network, right? Let's pretend you've played a game and you won or lost and you're back on the menu and you want to play again. You're already connected to the Photon network, so you don't need to join again. So this is saying if you're already joined, do this. Otherwise, do this, right? Otherwise, connect using the settings. Either way, after this, you'll be connected, okay? And then next to this, we want to override some functions. Now, to override functions that aren't normally in mono behaviors, we need to change this to mono behavior pun callbacks. Now, if you remember, pun is Photon Unity Network, and it's essentially a multiplayer mono behavior that they've made to have some extra functions, basically, and we're going to override those functions to do whatever we want. So we're going to override, so public override on connected to master. Okay, so connected to master is just saying that's when you've connected to Photon, right? When you've connected to their server. So debug.log connected to master, and then we'll say if is connecting photon network dot join random room. Okay, so we set is connecting to true when we start finding an opponent. Then this will get called if we're not currently logged in. And then it'll log us in here. And by log in, I just mean connect, not actually logging in. Okay. Then we want to override disconnect in case we disconnect. So override on disconnect. Whoops, that's not right. On disconnect. So if we disconnect, we just want to say waiting status panel dot set active false because we're not waiting anymore. We're going to go back to the find opponent panel. If that's this, remember this is if we disconnect, right? So debug.log, and we'll say disconnected due to, and then we'll pass in the cause, which is an enum that they tell us. So that's the disconnection cause. Okay, so that's what happens when we disconnect. We're just going to go back to the menu essentially. Okay, and then we're going to also override on join random room failed. Okay. So if we fail to join a random room but we're not disconnected, it simply means there are no random rooms to join, okay? So we're just going to say debug.log, like no clients are waiting for an opponent creating a new room. Okay, no clients are waiting for an opponent creating a new room. And then let's create the new room. So we're going to say photon network dot create room. The name can be null, which just means it gives it a default name. We don't need to set the name, it can just do it itself. And then room options, so we'll say new room options. all we need to set in the room options is the max players per room. So I'm going to say max players equals max players per room. If you add more settings, then obviously put it on a new line or create the object first and pass it in. For now, I'm just going to do it inline. You know, we just want to set the players per room. Okay. And that's it, really. Photon.create room that. And then finally, actually no, there's two more, not one more. We need to do what happens when we join a room, right? So public override join room on join room. So when we join a room, we want to obviously log it just to help us know what's going on. So debug.log client successfully joined a room. Then let's grab the player count. So we'll say the player count is equal to photon network dot current room. So current room is the one you have joined, right? We've just joined a room. That's the room we're in. Dot player count is obviously how many people are in that room. So we're going to say, well, if the player count is not equal to the max players per room, or the the amount we need to start a game, then just say waiting status text dot text equals waiting for an opponent, right? So, we'll just say waiting for opponent, because this is the thing that's displayed in the game. I like to have it short and simple. So if waiting for opponent, then in the log we'll just say client is waiting for an opponent. Okay, that's what we're logging. And then otherwise, if it is equal to the max players per room, then it means the match is about to start because we've got enough players, right? So debug.log match is ready to begin. Okay, and then we'll set the waiting status text now to be opponent found. Okay, and then finally, this is what happens when a player enters our room, right? When a player enters our own room. Void on player entered room passes in who it is. When a player enters the room, we want to now check in here if that equals the max amount, right? If photon network dot current room dot player count, not current lobby, dot current room dot player count is equal to the max players per room. If it is, then we're going to say photon network dot current room dot is closed. Dot is open. False. So this stops new players joining because we've reached the max amount. I think it'll already do that anyway because we set the max amount earlier, but let's just make sure. Then we'll say log match is ready to begin. Okay. Then we'll say the waiting status text dot text is equal to opponent found, like earlier. So this is this is going to be shown on the person who was already in the lobby because it's when someone else enters, and this is for the person who's entering. Okay. Then down here we want to just say photon network dot load level. So we're loading it through the photon network, so it knows to use that setting from earlier. And then we pass in the name for the scene. So I'm going to call it scene underscore main. Okay. And that's just saying, go to that scene. And that's it, to be honest. That's all we need to get people loaded in. So if we go back to Unity, we've written that code. We need to go to the build settings and make sure, guys, you've got your scenes here with the main menu being the first one at the top so that it loads when you open the game. And make sure the other one's there so you can go to it. In my other scene, by the way, all I've done is just put a floor down. That's it. Nothing else. Just a floor. Obviously, a light and a camera, but that's it, just for now. And we want to then go to the actual thing here and open this up. Okay. So on the system main menu, we'll add the main menu script. We'll have to drag in the find opponent panel and the waiting status panel and the waiting status text. So that's all there. And then on the find opponent button, so if we go down to the find opponent button, we need to tell the system main menu to find opponent. Okay, and I think that's it because we've done everything else. That continue button actually, needs to tell the system main menu to continue. Let me just go up here to remember what the function is called. Is it find opponent? actually no, sorry. The button here for continue is the panel name input dot save player name. I forgot to do that one earlier, my bad. Okay, let's just save everything on that prefab and go back up to the top. Make sure everything is saved. And now we want to go build and run the game. I'm going to go to my folder where I have builds, so game builds. I'll make a folder called Photon Tutorial, and I'll click select folder and it'll build. So I'm going to skip ahead now, guys, until the game's built, and then we're going to try and join it on the editor and the built version so we can both join it and see if it connects and works. Alright, I'll be back with you in a minute. Okay, so apparently the resolution selection thing is disabled, so I'm going to have to just tab between them. But if I press play in the editor and we wait a second, and I'm going to type in my name as Dapper and press continue, find opponent. You see it says searching, and then it's going to change in a second to be waiting for opponent, right? So it says the client successfully joined a room, is waiting. And if I go here and I type in, like, not Twitch, I'm on YouTube now, so I'll go YouTube, right? Continue, find opponent. As soon as it finds an opponent, my scene has now changed to this scene main, and the other client is now also in scene main. The match is ready to begin. Boom, we're in the scene. So that's it for tutorial 1. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm still going to be doing my RPG system series alongside this, so next video should be on the RPG systems, and then on Friday when I do my next video after that, we'll be coming back to actually start building something inside here. But now we've got it so players can connect to the same server and go to a scene together. So yeah, that's all we're doing for now. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe, it'd mean a lot. This might have been a bit of a longer video because there's a lot of setup and stuff. I mean, this recording's been going on for 40 minutes, so I'm going to obviously try and cut it down, remove all the pausing and importing and downloading stuff. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video though. Please let me know about it in the comments and what you want to see. Not just on this series, but on the channel in general. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.